Alright, so let's get back to debugging this Android application. So what we're trying to reproduce is a problem I've been having in using this app, where we have an episode downloaded, and actually in my case I generally have several. Let's see, I'm going to disable breakpoints temporarily, download a few of these episodes. And the issue I've been seeing in using this app is occasionally when I come back and try to play an episode, the one that's already been downloaded, I'll click play and something will be wrong with the file, or I'm not quite sure what's wrong, but if I click play in certain cases, it'll just switch back to having to re-download the episode. So what we've learned so far is that the files are all stored in a folder specific to this app, and they're just stored in files named with the ID of the episode. So potentially what we haven't looked into is what happens when we try to play the file and read it from the file system. I guess we did look briefly at the code for that, but we didn't really look at what possible things could go wrong there. So it seems like there are a few possibilities for this bug. One is that, as some other people noted it having problems with, maybe the name of the folder is changed in the preferences for some reason. That seems unlikely in my case because my app has had it configured just at the default. So that seems unlikely for my case. Another possibility is that the files are getting deleted. Another possibility, it seems like, is if the if the ID of the episode changes in the database somehow, then the file would not, the file would be there, but it would be looking for a different file name because the file name depends on the ID of the episode. So that's another possibility. So I'm wondering if there are ways that we can try to figure out which of those it is. And first, what I wanted to check out was to try looking directly on the file system and make sure we see the files in the right place on the phone. So we can use ADB for this. If we had it installed, apparently. All right. So let's install one more thing. This is using a different, this is the Android from Homebrew. Okay, what we want to do is run ADB that corresponds to the Android SDK that is installed with Android Studio. Let's see. Enable ADB integration. I'm not quite sure how to do that, so let's see if we can find some information on that first. Android Studio, run ADB commands. Alright, this first one looks good. If you need Android SDK, that's an old answer. App data local. Okay, so it looks like it should be installed in the let's see, in the folder that all of this Android stuff is in. Guess that's not super helpful because I'm not sure where that is on the Mac. Can we see any information about it in here? I guess if we run one of these programs, we should be able to see information about it. Oh, here it is. Library Android SDK. Okay, cool. So we should be able to find ADB in there. In Library Android SDK. Okay, and then in Platform Tools, ADB. Okay, so let's run that. And if we do ADB ADB devices, well, I'll come back to me in a minute. Okay, so here's the emulator. So let's try ADB shell and go to storage. And we saw earlier, this is apparently the username of the Android user on the emulator. And then in here, we can go to Android, data, then the PodListen package name, files. Can we run find in here? Yeah, okay. So we have some images and we have the podcasts. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes, and we have 5 podcast files in here. Okay. Great. So let's try one thing. If I delete one of these files, so let's delete this one. Now, why don't we kill the app and restart it and see what things look like. Okay, so the app still thinks everything is downloaded. And if we try to play these, okay, apparently that was the one. So when I clicked play, it realized the file wasn't there anymore and wants to re-download it. And if we download it again, then it should end up with the same file name that we had before. Okay, so those symptoms match what I am seeing. So that is still one valid possibility of what's happening. Maybe the files are just getting deleted for some reason. That kind of seems unlikely because this folder is not like marked as a cache folder or anything like that. So there shouldn't be any reason that the files would get deleted unless the app itself is doing that for some other reason. And I haven't heard about that as being a feature of this app. So that seems possible but unlikely. Seems like the next possibility is if the ID of the episode were to change for some reason. So maybe it's possible that when it refreshes the episode list, maybe the IDs of the episodes could change. So why don't we look into where these IDs come from in the first place and see if that's a possibility. Because I'm noticing like these are kind of arbitrary numbers and they're even different lengths and I have no idea where they're coming from. So let's try to figure out how the IDs are generated and see if there's a possibility that if the podcast feed is updated, maybe the IDs for the same episode could change and that could cause the symptoms that we're seeing. So let's see. There was a place in the download receiver, I think, where we were looking at doing queries. And here is the ID, I believe, of the episode. So this provider, this first part essentially is the table. So this is the provider's table, or the episodes table. And this is the ID column in that table. So why don't we look for other places that reference the episodes table and see if we can figure out where the IDs initially come from. I'm going to use option F7 again to search for that. Ooh, this is used all over the place. So it's used in background operations. This is for doing a query, apparently to find, this looks like it's maybe looking for in-progress downloads. Okay, let's look at the next one. Download receiver, we looked a bunch at that. This is in the process download results. Okay. So this is also for doing downloads. We have stop downloads. We have update download queue and update progress. Okay, so those are all related to downloads. So that's later in long after the episode ID has been created. Here's one. And this is for the history feed fragment. Okay, this looks like it's just loading a chunk of data for displaying later. The cursors are related to querying. Foreground service. Here we have an update. This looks like it's changing the state of an episode. Okay, so this is probably changing it to say like, oh, we've played the episode or something like that. On create. So this happens when the player service is initially created. So this is another loader or another cursor for querying. Okay. Preferences. What does this do? This is in the clear storage. Okay, so this is just if you ask to manually delete everything. Then the sync state. Here's another query. And then the sync worker. Insert. Okay. So here is where we are creating records in this table. And it looks like values is a chunk of data that we're going to stick in the episodes table. And here's the ID field. So where does this ID come from? Farther up. Okay, it comes from the podcast helper. And, interesting. It comes from the link. I'm assuming that's the URL of the MP3. So where is this? Why don't we set a breakpoint here and just debug into this for a moment and see what's happening. And then we can step into this generate ID while we're in the debugger and see how that algorithm works. Oh, actually, is it telling us right here? Try to update the episode timestamp. If this fails, the episode is not yet in the database. Insert it. ID is a hash of the Atom or RSS's. Oh, is the hash of Atom's ID or the RSS's GU ID. If these fields are absent, and I'm assuming we have the latest version of PodListen because we just checked it out from GitHub, then ID is the hash. Oh, I see. Okay. So this line apparently is the fallback hash of the audio URL. And then it tries to update it. Yeah, okay. Then if it has a GUID, it uses that instead. And And what did it say about Adam's ID? Okay, so let's debug into here and see which is happening. And actually, I'm going to go check on my phone and see if I have an episode that is doing this for me right now. So let's see. Yeah. So I actually just tried this on my phone here, and I just saw this happen for an episode of Song Exploder called Grimes Kill vs. Mame. So let's see if we can actually get that exact episode. Yeah, it was this episode. So we're trying to download it. The ID for it is this. And let me see if I see this on another episode on a different podcast.
Planet Money?
Yeah, okay. So this just happened for me on another episode on my phone. And that was on the Planet Money podcast. So let's download that and make a note of how the episode ID is generated for that podcast. So I think it's in this list. There we go. So when that loads, I'm expecting we'll hit this other breakpoint for generating IDs. And when does this happen? This happens when it tries to insert episodes. So yeah, that should happen as soon as this refresh is done. Let's see. Something else stopped in the debugger? I don't think so. Okay. Well, while we wait for that, I need to grab a snack real quick, and be back in just a moment.